Sam, Julian, and Mike, I really enjoyed your demo and briefly bumping into you at RxJS Live, where you used the movie picker. But now I actually want to pick it apart and basically show a way that some of the operator trouble that you got into, the Rx helper package, exists partly and precisely to help with problems like that. So I've taken your demo, and we still route things through the dispatcher. I'm assuming that anyone watching is familiar with this demo. And we're going to route things through the dispatcher, and we're going to actually consume every event from that dispatcher by subscribing to it through a thing called the agent. The agent is the primary export from the Rx helper package, and it's like an event bus. So in order to put events on the event bus, you must give them a type. So the event type of events from the dispatcher will be movie click. The way that movie click events get consumed is by specifying handlers on movie click or filters on movie click. The difference is that the filter movie click, is synchronous and it occurs before the handler. So the optimistic UI pattern you're using, you basically want to set the button emoji in a filter and then do the async stuff in an on handler. So we see that we are subscribing to all events from the dispatcher as movie click. And what we have here is an event handler, a special kind of event handler that says on movie click, capture the event, and from its payload, the movie ID, each item on this observable becomes part of the payload. And then we do toggle status, which is the async function. We return it as an observable, and similar to how we said the dispatcher's events get consumed as movie click, we're saying that this observable's events get consumed as movie DB update. Okay, similarly, when we see a movie DB update event, which are the return values from toggle status, we pull apart its movie and status and we do the logging. So let's actually just build and serve. Sounds like what I do on a day-to-day basis. Build and serve. And see that what we have is exactly the scenario that you started off the demo with, where you can run into the concurrency problem where the database ends up, the state ends up in a true, where the UI ends up in a false. So this is effectively the merge map variety, which is what you get with event handlers when there is no way of specifying their concurrency. Are there any other points I want to make about this? Yes, I've added a line toggling local state to helpers, just simply to say that this is happening right away, whereas the observable value happens after some delay. I just did that to help us keep straight in our minds what's going on here. So I'm going to kill this server. We're going to start it up again with this command in just a second. But this event handler does not do anything when there is concurrency going on, and that is what all the group by and switch map stuff is for. But the whole point of Rx helper is that you don't have to really alter the architecture of your program to specify its concurrency. You don't have to build an observable of a different shape. You don't have to do anything but specify a different string. And there's a mode called cutoff. I'll send an image of the 4 different concurrency modes. They correspond to the RxJS operators, so you should be comfortable in knowing that we're not going to lose any RxJS goodness. But if we specify the cutoff mode, we're now at the stage of your demo where we can click 3 times and it goes to true, and only the final true comes back. So the point of this is to prevent any condition from ever occurring within a given movie that causes the events to get out of sync. Great. Now before we get completely dynamic like group by allows us to be, if we had a matcher that was more sophisticated than this string, we could have a matcher for each different movie, because this cutoff mode would then apply to each movie individually. So suppose we had a function matches movie click on, which takes a movie ID and returns a predicate a Boolean function that we would use to basically replace this string match with matches movie click on 1. Okay, so if we match a movie click on 1, then we should run the same function. And if we matched on 2, we could run a different function. Of course, this could be dried up. I'm just doing this for illustration purposes, that what this should do is create 2 handlers, each of which are in cutoff mode. Thanks, Prettier, for making that totally ginormous. Let's do that and leave that alone. So now each handler itself is in cutoff mode, aka switch map, and it appears to be broken. Don't know why. Is it a string thing and a number thing? We have matches. Oh, movie / click. There we go. There we go. Save that. Yeah, that's what we got going on. So basically, we've set up handler 1 and handler 2, each of which is in cutoff mode. There's number 2 in cutoff mode. There's number 3 in cutoff mode. And that is sufficient, but not dynamic. Ready to go dynamic? So, to make this fully dynamic, we're going to go back to our filter function. And the filters run before the handlers. So what you can actually do is find out whether there is already a handler for that movie, and if not, add it. And because the filters run earlier, the handler will then run for that movie. So we have our function matches movie click on. We're going to use it in a second. And first we're going to set the emoji and create a convention for what our handler name will be. And if the agent does not have a handler for that movie, then that agent.on function is going to be run on matches movie click on our movie ID that came in. So that's going to be the predicate for which we now run a function that toggles the status in cutoff mode, and we could even capture the subscription into a variable from attaching this event handler. The usefulness of that would become apparent later if you wanted to unsubscribe to a movie, not keep this handler around forever. If you don't expect future clicks, you could say call sub.unsubscribe in a set timeout, but we're not going to do that now. Oh, all right. I just have to undo the damage that Prettier did to my code and basically come back and give this handler a name. Okay, so that handler name should be specified as the name of this so that we don't add these things willy-nilly. Now I can save and it won't reformat my code. I can rebuild, and hopefully over here we will now see that individually our handlers are in cutoff mode, so they cut off previous ones, always ending in a consistent state, but they do not cut off each other because the handlers are distinct between them. So now, is this possible with observables? It totally is. This is an advanced case. I don't know if this looks better, actually, than the observable version. I don't know if it's easier to come up with the solution, but I do feel like these bundled concurrency modes, cutoff, parallel, serial, and mute, which correspond to the operators, are named more mnemonically. I've even made a mnemonic specifying how the Rx helper modes correspond to the corresponding RxJS modes of our operators. And I've got no shortage of mnemonics trying to clarify in which case you would use each mode. And thankfully, I think things like serial and parallel are kind of self-explanatory so that you don't need to have so much confusion about operators. So in short, Sam and Mike, really thanks for your demo, but please consider if this mode of handlers and conditions and returning observables that get processed with a specified concurrency. Do you think that's a more teachable mode? Do you think that it's useful for building? I am using this in production, so I have a team of maybe 3 who are happy working this way. This library's been around for at least 15 months, but I personally have found it really challenging to explain operators to people, and I think that maybe if you have this concept of handlers with specifications for what they handle and then returning observables, you can really ease your way into it. Like, I'm all about easing beginners into RxJS. So really, thanks for your consideration. If you watch this all the way through, you're a better man than me. So get in touch and let me know what you think. Thanks.